I'm William Meyer. I'm the Director of Communications and Career Development at the Mining Industry Human Resources Council, otherwise known as MIR. So thank you all for joining us for the first of MIR's bi-monthly series of Mining Needs You Career Ambassador webinars. Mining Needs You is a national career awareness campaign supported by a coalition of industry partners that's designed to inspire the next generation of mining workers. So miningneedsyou.ca has more information about the campaign, including the ambassador program, which we launched in partnership with CIM, the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy, and Petroleum. So I'm honored to welcome today's career ambassador, Mélanie LaRoche-Boisvert, who will be delivering a presentation titled Breaking Ground, Empowering the Next Generation of Women in Mining. We're thrilled to have her join us in celebration of the International Day of Women in Mining, which took place earlier this month on June 15th. So a few housekeeping items before I fully introduce Melanie. First off, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from MIR's office in Ottawa, situated on traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. MIR recognizes their stewardship of this land. We also acknowledge the contributions of all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in shaping and strengthening our communities. And we recognize that you're all joining us today from many places across the country and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. So one quick note that this webinar is being recorded. It's going to be uploaded to the Mining Needs You YouTube channel and emailed to attendees within a week. There'll be a link to a short survey in the email that we're asking that you all fill out, letting us know your thoughts on this webinar and if there are any other topics you'd like us to focus on in this series. And we've set aside a bit of a time at the end of Melanie's presentation for Q&As. So please type your questions in the MS Teams chat feature. I'll be monitoring that. Like I said, this is the first time we're using Teams for a webinar, so we're hoping it goes off without a hitch. And then I'll be able to ask Melanie your questions after she's finished her presentation. So now it's my pleasure to introduce you to the speaker for today, to Melanie. She's a mining engineer at ArcelorMittal, supporting on-site and corporate technical services. She previously worked for a consultant at DRA Global. She holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in mining engineering from McGill University, with her research focused on optimizing mine-to-port transportation. She's actively involved in the industry, serving on CIM's awards committee, co-chairing the 2025 CIM Connect Convention's technical program, and participating in Women in Mining Canada for over 10 years. She also supports young mining professionals and mentors mining engineering students at McGill University. And of course, she's an active Mining Needs You career ambassador and the volunteer for our first in the series of webinars. So Melanie, I thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks all for the introduction and thanks for having me. Today I've got a presentation for you. It's going to start off mostly going over my career so far and then talking about diversity and the place for women in the mining industry, and then we'll open it up for questions. I do want to say I geared the presentation a little bit more towards people looking to enter the industry, so that's why it's more focused on like the start of the career path. So just going to share my screen. All right, so if we get started. So who am I? Like Will said, my name is Mélanie LaRoche-Boisvert. I'm a mining engineer. I'm also a serial volunteer, and you didn't mention it, but I'm a serial student as well. I just love to learn new things, so I'm usually constantly in a class of some kind. So I want to start off with how did I first choose a career in mining? So when I was in high school, I decided I wanted to explore as many options as I could. I knew I probably wanted to go into something in STEM. I wasn't necessarily sure of what. So I decided I would take all of the math and science classes that were offered at my high school. I also got really lucky because there was an Earth and Planetary Sciences class that was offered, but it was only offered once every 2 years if enough students signed up for the class. And enough students actually represented 5 students from both grade 11 and grade 12. To give you some context too, we were about 150 to 200 students per year at my high school. So we needed like basically 1 or 2% of the students to actually choose this class for it to happen. And it was actually the first time in at least 5 years that this class was being offered, because we happened to have 5 students who decided they wanted to take this class. So I was really excited about that one. And I got really lucky because my teacher was actually an ex-geologist working in exploration geology for De Beers. So a large part of that class actually focused on geology and showing us all the different rocks and things like that. And I love geology, but I knew I didn't want to be a geologist. I actually, at that point, decided I wanted to be an engineer. And because of his experience in mining, I realized mining engineer would probably be the best fit for me. So I want to say thank you to that teacher. He's the reason I'm here now doing this presentation, because otherwise I never even would have known that the mining industry was a choice. Growing up in Ottawa, you don't really hear much about it. I'm not from a mining family. There's really nothing much going on in Ottawa. There is a quarry, but we mostly go there to go bungee jumping. So most people don't realize that it's a quarry. So anyways, with all that being said, through that class, I decided I wanted to be a mining engineer. And then the next step became, well, where do I go to study this? I had to do a lot of research because, like I said, there's really not much in Ottawa, and there's no mining engineering program in Ottawa. So I ended up applying to McGill, to University of Toronto, to UBC, a few other schools. And I ended up going to McGill University, which is also where my parents went. So in 2013, I started my undergraduate degree at McGill. And during that time, I was able to learn a lot more about the mining industry. We were able to go on field trips. I did some internships or co-ops. And I was also very involved in like undergrad student activities. So I was part of the Mining Engineering Undergraduate Society. I participated in the Canadian Engineering Competition Organizing Committee. We founded study groups to help each other out and like reduce our workload. I started with women in mining. I tried to start a student chapter at McGill. It didn't really work out, but through that process, I was able to actually get in touch with the ladies at WIM Canada, and that's how my whole journey with WIM Canada started, co-founding some of the awards and just eventually getting on the board and doing what I do now. I also participated in the Canadian Mining Games, the SME Student Design Competition. I was a TA, so I was really just like trying to get as involved as possible during my undergrad. And the main reason I got that involved was when I first started, the industry was in a downturn. And finding internships as a new student with quite literally nothing on her CV was really, really difficult. And so I decided I would get involved in as many things as I could to try and get something on my CV that might help make me stand out compared to other students and give me my first internship, my first shot. That ended up not really helping. What really helped is actually networking. I got lucky in the sense that my first internship, we'll talk about here, was with TransCanada Pipelines. And at the time, it was actually my parents' friend who was working there and was hiring interns. So through a conversation with them, they mentioned I was looking for an internship, oil and gas, related to mining. Maybe he'd give me a shot or at least an interview so I can get some practice. And he agreed to at least give me an interview. And he ended up liking me enough to hire me. So I was able to do my first internship for 8 months at TransCanada Pipelines on what was at the time the Energy East project, and never ended up getting built, but that gave me so much really valuable experience in understanding how projects get built, the regulatory process, and the differences between different provinces across the country, because this pipeline was going from Alberta to the Maritimes. Throughout my undergrad, I also eventually got my second internship. So I went on exchange to the University of Chile for about 8 months, and I was able to do an internship in a lab there. So I worked in a sustainability lab, helping the graduate students with their research, mostly on water management, which was really great. But the best part about this internship was the fact that it was in Chile. So I was able to learn Spanish, and I had a lot of opportunities to go visit some mines in Chile so that I could learn the differences between the mining industry there and here. And actually, one of the key differences I found was in water management. A lot of the mines in Chile are actually in mountains, in the desert, so they don't have a lot of water easily available. So the way that they manage their water, that they recycle their water, is very, very different than here in Canada, where, as it turns out, we have a lot of water. It's easily accessible. So we don't have to be as strict with it as they do there. Obviously, we have a lot of regulations for quality, but in terms of like using it, it's not like every single drop could be make or break for the operation, basically. So honestly, the exchange in Chile is still one of the best experiences of my life. If anybody has a chance to go live in a different country for 8 months to a year, I would highly recommend that you take it. But after my internship, I finished up my undergrad and I decided I would do a master's degree. Um, why did I choose a master's degree instead of going to go work? Frankly, it's because the topic was really interesting to me. Um, the professor at McGill, Roussos Dimitriopoulos, had reached out to me and asked me if I was interested in doing a degree in stochastic mine planning. And I thought that was actually a really interesting topic and potentially useful later on as some industries start taking on more and more AI, but also more and more uncertainty and planning for the uncertainty. So I decided to do that master's for about 2 years. And during that time, I was also a part of the Mining Engineering Graduate Society. I was a TA union rep. I was still involved with women in mining. I also got involved with young mining professionals at that time. And I was also a TA for the students. Um, the master's has really helped me actually understand a lot of the processes more deeply that we use. So, for example, I had to code my own software or my own programs for mine planning. And so now, whenever I use a mining software, it's that knowledge is really helpful when it comes to debugging. And we all know how like there's always something that goes wrong when you're trying to do a mine plan or trying to use any kind of software. So having that knowledge has been really helpful in making that process a lot easier to manage. During my master's, I was also able to do a third internship. So I was on the long-term geology team at ArcelorMittal. Luckily, I was able to do it part-time so that I could continue working on my master's at the same time. I was able to learn quite a bit about geology, which was something that I didn't have very much experience in, having mostly focused on the mining engineering portion of the industry. And I was also able to learn also about geotech, which was something else I knew about, but I didn't really have very much deep knowledge of. Unfortunately, during this internship, the pandemic started and all the interns were sent home. So that included me. And so I went back to doing my master's full time until I eventually graduated in December of 2020. After graduation, I started to work. So the first job I got out of graduation was as a mining engineer at DRA. So DRA is an engineering consulting business mainly focused on the mining industry. So everything they do is mining related. And that was a really, really, really good experience for me because it gave me exposure to all types of projects. So different commodities, different mining methods, different locations around the world, and different types of engineering levels. So that's where I learned more about when you're starting a new project. At the very beginning, you have very little information. So you start with a pre-economic assessment or even just mineral resource estimate. So something to get you started to get to see whether or not this project is worth pursuing. After that, you move on into a feasibility study, pre-feasibility study, and then into a feasibility study. If that feasibility study looks good and everything looks good for your project, then you can move on and do detailed engineering to then go into construction. So I got access, well, I got exposure to every single one of those steps. And I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that when you're trying to learn something and really break into an industry. Getting that kind of variety is great. But not only did I get all of that, I also got to work with active mines that were that didn't necessarily have the in-house capabilities of doing long-term planning. So I got to do long-term planning and capital projects for some existing mines that were in operation, which also gave me exposure to how a mine actually runs and makes its long-term plans. So a really great experience there. But after a few years, I decided maybe I should actually go work for an operating mine. It's all well and good, but when you're a consultant, you always have that little bit of separation between the operations, and I wanted to go learn more about that. So I got a job at ArcelorMittal where I had done my third internship, and now I'm the principal specialist of technical services there. So my job here is to basically provide support to both the geology and the mining engineering teams on the long, medium, and short range timescales. And that gives me access to the actual operation at the mine, which is what I was looking for, right? To get closer to the operations and really understand how a mine works directly, as well as the more long-term strategic planning side of it. So that's been a really great experience as well. And throughout my career, so from the time I was a student up until today, and it's going to continue on until I don't know how long. I apparently can't help myself, but continue to volunteer. I've been involved in a variety of different ways outside of my work. So I was a volunteer with Women in Mining Canada as a student. Once I graduated, I was actually able to get myself elected to the board. So I became a director, eventually even became vice chair. And now as part of a structural change at WIM, I've agreed to step down from the board and become the admin to help with that transition. So I'm still very much involved there. I was also last year co-chair of the technical program of the CIM annual conference in Montreal, which was a really great experience to learn more about the different aspects of the industry, how some of these big conferences get put on, and give me access to some really high up people as well. So that was great. Up until recently, I was also a member of the awards committee at the CIM, which is a really great opportunity to learn more about the amazing people in this industry and all of the work that they're doing. And being able to recognize that, which to me is very important. I'm also a career ambassador at MIHR, doing this presentation, and then some potential future involvements. So trying to see if I can maybe get involved with other organizations, maybe become a board member there. And we're also working on founding the Montreal Mining Alumni Network for graduates of the mining engineering programs in Montreal. So now I'm going to shift over from my career, which has only been 5 years. So I'm also really excited about what's coming, and focus more about just women in mining in general and diversity in the industry. So women's share of the labor force, and these graphs are all courtesy of MIHR. They do really great research if anybody's looking for more demographics information in the mining industry. It's a really great source. Women's share of the labor force is around 50% when you look at it. But when it comes to mining specifically, we've been hovering around 15% for the last 15 years. Sometimes we go up a little bit and then we go back down. And then when we're back down, we go back up. So it's a little bit cyclical, but we're usually pretty steady in and around that 15%. And when it comes to what exactly we're doing in the mining industry, the majority of the women in the industry are in support worker roles, human resources and finance, and then the technical roles and the trades especially are where we have much less representation. And then if we continue on the diversity side, just to give you an idea, it's a similar trend for immigrants in the labor force in Canada. So it has been growing. It's about 30% overall, but it's only about 15% now in the mining industry. And then here, though, it's kind of like almost the opposite of what women are doing. So a lot more in the professional physical sciences, on the technical roles, fewer in the support roles, but still very little on the trade side. And when it comes to Indigenous people's shares, overall in the population, it's quite low. But this is where the mining industry is actually doing a better job than the overall market in Canada, where we're actually around 10% of the industry right now is Indigenous people versus only about 4% of the total share of the labor force. And here, what we see is that we have a lot more people from Indigenous communities doing production and trades, and very few on the technical side or the human resources and financial side. So it's a little bit different depending on the different groups. But I bring it up because I want to just show the benefits of diversity in industry in general and where mining can benefit from it, but also just to showcase that there's a lot of room to grow. So if you're part of one of these groups, we're underrepresented, but that means that there's a lot more space for us to take. There's a lot more space available for us to take. There's more opportunities there because the industry is also looking for more of the diversity because of the benefits that come with it. So if you represent one of those groups, you're going to get probably more opportunities, which is actually really great for us. So some of the benefits of diversity is companies are 2 times more likely to meet or exceed their financial targets. They're 6 times more likely to be innovative and agile. Why? Because they have different points of view being represented, which causes debate, which means that you have new things you can try, and maybe you can find the flaws in some things and avoid making those mistakes earlier on, so you become a little bit more innovative. You're 3 times as likely to be a high-performing company, and you're 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. You're more likely to achieve all the targets that you've put on because you've got different points of view, different skill sets, different types of experience coming along, and there's only benefits for that. So to conclude my presentation, I'm going to questions. You have a lot of career options in the mining industry. I've only really presented my career so far in mining, but there's a lot of room for everybody in the mining industry. And if you're one of the minority groups, you've got even more opportunities for you because people are actively looking for those groups. Because one, mining has a major labor shortage, and we have had for like 10 years now, and we need to attract new types of people, and we want new ideas. Mining also has a bit of an innovation problem. We want to innovate more. We need new ideas. So if you're interested in the industry, there is space for you. There is also, like I said, there's space for everybody in this industry. It doesn't really matter what background you have. We are an industry, so you can be technical, you can be on the law side, you can be in accounting. There's something for everybody here. And so don't be afraid of trying it out. And if you're coming in from a different industry and you're like, not really sure about mining, please give it a try. You're probably going to end up liking it, and you might get more opportunities than in any other industry. So that is what I have today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to open it up for questions and or comments if there are any. It was a bit shorter than I expected, but that's okay.
That was great. Thank you very much, Melanie. It's much appreciated that you participated in this, and I think that was a fabulous presentation. And I want to thank the audience as well. We have a large audience for this webinar. So it was great to see the interest in this presentation. And we do have several questions from the audience that I'd like to pass along to you, Melanie. The first of which was, how can educational institutions support young women in pursuing careers in mining?
I think the main thing is there's two different things you can do. So one is putting a little bit more effort into recruiting people into the program. So into the mining related programs, number one. When schools go to high schools or CEGEPs in Quebec to recruit people, mining is usually not something that's even spoken about. And the mining related programs like mining engineering or geology are usually ignored. So number one is just even presenting those options to people who are considering going to university or to college afterwards. And number two is, while people are in school, the people in the mining specific programs are already interested in the mining industry. They already know about it. So it's about bringing those, like the mining related topics, to other groups and letting them know that it exists. So for example, if you want to support mining on the finance side, there's usually commodity trading groups and things like that. Well, you can go talk to those people and present to them the mining industry, support the ladies who are interested in finance and consider maybe mining finance. Same thing with law. We have a ton of lawyers specialized in mining M&A and things like that. So like, again, presenting the mining industry to those other topics. And when it comes to the women studying in mining specific programs, there's usually very few of them. So it's more about making sure that they're not being excluded from something. So you can't always include everybody, but making sure that they're not purposely being excluded is the number one thing. So it does still happen. We've made a lot of progress as an industry, but discrimination still happens. Sexism still happens. It's not as bad as it once was, but it's not gone yet. And so it's making sure that there are processes in place to make sure that they're not being actively excluded, and making sure that they are instead being included into different activities.
Great answer to that question, and a bunch of questions have been coming in while you've been talking as well. Things just as, which I was actually thinking during your presentation, was how do you juggle all these extracurriculars?
Yeah, you make a choice. No. It's a lot easier to have all these activities when you start in school. So when it's just always a part of your life, it just kind of stays that way once you start your career. So that's one way to get going. When you're in school, everybody's involved in all of the things. That's usually how you make new friends. That's how you get to network with people in the industry. So it's a lot easier to start getting involved. Once you're in your career, most companies will actually support you if you want to do additional things. They'll allow you to take a certain number of hours a week and dedicate it to that, or per month, depending on what it is that you're doing, and dedicate it to that activity so that you can be involved while still doing your work, because it's actually beneficial for both you and the company that you're working for. For you, you get to develop skills that you won't otherwise be able to you'll be able to meet people that you wouldn't otherwise be able to meet. So there's really a lot of benefits for a little bit of extra work. And for the company, it's beneficial for them to support you and to give you that additional time because the extra exposure. So whenever you get asked to do a presentation, you present yourself as being from that company. Whenever you introduce yourself to somebody new from a different place, maybe there's going to be like a good connection to be made for the company. Well, you're introducing yourself on behalf of that company. So you're talking about the organization that you're working with, but also the company that you work with full time. So it's really like a mutually beneficial thing. So the company support is a huge way that I'm able to do all of this, is because I'm able to do it during work hours or slightly adjust my work hours to be able to do all of this so that it's not all on the weekends, for example.
Right. And a lot of interest in your presentation, a lot of questions here, and there's a few that are kind of in the same vein. So I'm going to kind of summarize a few here into one. Essentially, how would one become more involved in groups like Women in Mining, CIM, etc.? How can women and young people get more involved in the industry itself as they're trying to start a career in mining?
So unfortunately, the answer to that is talk to people. There's not, for most of these places, there isn't a formal way for you to apply to get involved. Most of the time, it's by getting to know people, talking to them, and then you see, oh, they're involved, you're interested in getting involved, so they'll make space for you in that organization. So if you're interested in getting involved with Women in Mining Canada, that one's easy. You can send an email at info@wimcanada.org. I'm the one in charge of that email. I will meet with you. I will find a spot for you. So please send me an email. If you want to get involved in other places, the best way to start is actually go to your local networking events and get to know some people there, and then let them know you're interested in getting involved. The easiest place to get involved is at the local level. And then from there, you can make the contacts with the national, for example. So if you want to get involved with CIM National, the easiest place to start is with your local CIM branch. Get to know them because they know the people at the national level. So through that, it'll take a little bit longer, but you can make those connections and then get involved at the national level. So it depends on what you want to do, but the very first thing to do is go out and talk to people and let them know that you're interested, because a lot of these things happen informally. Very few of them happen on a formal, here's an application, we're looking for people to get involved. It's really through word of mouth, which really sucks if you're starting out, but most of the networking events are free or very cheap to go to. So like CIM, WIM, and YMP events. There's Hispano Mine as well, mostly in Toronto. There's a lot of different groups. They're usually very financially accessible or free. And if you're not able to pay for them, normally if you send them an email, a lot of the times they'll be able to accommodate you because they want you to attend. So those are the best places to start if you're looking to get involved.
Great. Another question is, what kind of barriers are there, or the process changes needed to stop holding women back from joining trades rather than the other support and whatnot that you talked about during your presentation?
I'm going to have a little bit of trouble answering this one, mostly because I do not have a trades background. And so the best person to answer that question would be somebody who's been through it, who can tell you all of the challenges that they've faced. I think the main thing, at least for me, the main reason I didn't even consider a trade when I was a kid is because I was always pushed towards university, which is not a bad thing, but I was never shown as many of the options on the trade side for what would happen post-secondary. So for me, university was always the first choice, and I never even considered college until I went to university, and I thought, oh, maybe that would have been interesting to do. So number one is actually presenting those options to kids, and presenting them to high school students to let them know that these are options. They pay well, they're good jobs, they're stable jobs. Like, it's a viable option for you. The other one I would say is also like let girls play with like Tonka trucks and things like that, and let them know like that's okay, because then they might actually like the trucks and might want to become like a heavy duty mechanic, something like that. Versus if they're not exposed to that early on, they won't keep it in the back of their mind when they're making career decisions. But I think the best person to actually answer that question for trades would be somebody from a trades background, and hopefully we'll get one on the speaker series.
Yeah, we've got a minimum of 3 more of these going to be taking place this year, hoping to continue it past that time frame as well. So bi-monthly presentations by career ambassadors. And really, great answer. Exposure is key to trades for anybody, women and other individuals as well. If they don't know about it, they're not going to be able to go into it. So taking a step further from exposure, there's another question here about what you see from your perspective as being impactful ways the industry can reshape its image and deliver outreach to inspire more young women to see trades and or engineering and other mining careers as a rewarding career path.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a similar thing of exposure
Yeah.
again. One of the big issues that we see in the mining industry is that mining talks to mining, mining preaches to the choir. We go to mining conferences, we talk to people in mining related programs directly because we know that those people are actually interested, right? We don't always go to non-mining specific programs in school, non-mining conferences to present what the mining industry is doing. And bringing mining to the rest of the world rather than asking the rest of the world to come to mining. So it's something more about exposure at an earlier age to make sure that they're aware that mining is a thing. If you're not from a mining town, you're usually not exposed to it. You have no idea that it exists. So the return on investment is going to be lower for companies and for universities and colleges who are trying to recruit out of non-mining towns. But that is where you are going to get the fresh blood, the new people coming in, the new people who had no idea this existed. And now you've put the seed in their mind of like, maybe this is where I want to put, like, this is where I want to spend my career. The only reason I even knew the mining industry was an option is because I happened to have a geology teacher in high school, and I was super lucky that the class was actually offered that year. I actually checked with my high school. It has not been offered since. Not enough people have signed up. So it's a little bit difficult to get that exposure if you're not from a mining town. But if we empower, for example, high school science teachers, like you can do a biology class and have a biology and like geology like segment on it, right? Like fossils and things like that. That's biology and that's geology together. You can do physics, like geophysics, maybe do a small section on that just to get people a little bit more exposed. Like I said, bringing mining to the rest of the world rather than trying to bring the rest of the world to mining. We do a lot of things, or we're trying to do a lot of things with AI, but we only ever present it to other mining companies. So why not go to non-mining events that are on AI or technology and present what we're doing there? And you're actually going to get probably new ideas from people there or people interested in trying to help out what the mining industry is doing that they didn't even really realize was a potential market for them. So it's all about exposure and trying to do things a little bit differently. The return on investment is not going to be as big, but it will likely have a larger impact later on.
Okay, well, you mentioned AI in that response, and it just makes me personally kind of wonder, how do you see or foresee the role of automation and AI evolving in mining operations?
I think it's going to become more and more common for new mines coming online that will try to include automation from the get-go. I think for existing mines, it's going to be a little bit harder to transition to that. It's a difficult transition to make a lot of the times. And it's not always worth it because mines are not infinite commodities, let's say. They have a shelf life. They only last 10, 20 years. So if you're 10 years down your 20-year mine life, you're probably not going to make a massive investment for the next 10 years. It's probably not worth it. But for a new mine that's starting out, it will be worth doing it for the whole 20 years, right? So I see automation and AI and all these new technologies being much, much, much more applied in the new mines coming online and also probably the longer term mines. So we do have, for example, the iron mines in the Labrador Trough have been around for 60 plus years. Those ones still have a significant amount of mine life. They have more time to actually implement these things and do it correctly. And they have the ability, like the lead time they need to actually make that transition because they're never really fast transition. You have to go through testing. You have to go through all these different steps before you can like fully make that switch. So those ones would probably be the best candidates. But all the mines that are like there's 5-10 years left of their mine life, it's probably just not worth the investment for them, but it'll be worth it for the new mines coming online.
Okay, great. A bit of a different curveball in terms of a question here, changing subjects. I've watching your presentation, I think you had a really exciting and amazing educational and career journey so far. And one individual asked if you could go back in time, would there be anything that you would change in your career path?
Probably do a little bit less. Um,
Okay.
to be honest, I got involved in as many things as I could. I probably would have been a little bit more selective and focused in on those ones a little bit more. The reason for that is that now I'm like, I can't stop. And finding that work-life balance, like not just my job, but like all the other things I do is a little bit more difficult. So I think if I had started a little bit smaller, it would have been a better choice. Other than that, I might have tried to do a second exchange just because,
Mm.
like I said, still one of the best experiences of my life. Experiencing a new culture, a new language, seeing the industry from a whole different point of view is really great. So if I had had that opportunity to go to another country as well, I probably would have taken it.
Wow, really? After
Yeah, I
doing
mean,
all of that, yeah, it's quite a lot.
to be honest, the exchange was almost like an 8-month vacation.
Oh,
So I would absolutely do that again. Different country. You go to school, but you don't take a full workload because you're also there to learn about the industry, about the country and the culture, right? So you're not doing school full time. So you have a little bit more time for fun things. So, yeah.
perfect. Still going through some other questions. We got a few minutes left. We'll try to answer one or two more. And I think I'll share the questions afterwards with Melanie. Like I said at the beginning of this webinar, there's going to be an email sent out to all attendees with a link to the video to this webinar. We're going to put it on the Mining Needs You YouTube channel. And there'll also be a short survey link for you to fill out to get your thoughts on the webinar itself and any ideas of future topics. So any question we don't get through here, we'll try to put answers in that email as well when we send it out in the next week or so. But next up, I see here a question. An individual here said, really appreciated what you said about there being space for women, even in a male-dominated environment. But looking at kind of the stagnation of around 50% of women in the industry over the past decade, do you feel or do you have any experience where you would see companies actually putting effort into changing that, to increasing the percentage of women who work in mining? Do you see any kind of signs that it's shifting from all of your volunteer work and work with CIM, WIM, et cetera? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually really optimistic for the next few years. I think companies have started to realize that cannibalizing each other is not helpful for the industry. So I'm starting to see a little bit of a shift from trying to say our company has 50% women to we're working a little bit more broadly. We're bringing in women from other industries to work in mining because if you're taking people already in mining and just bringing them to your company, you're helping your company. You're not helping the industry, really. You're not actually changing the total number of women in the industry. So what I've seen is even some of the ladies on the Women in Mining Canada board actually were engineers or professionals in other industries and have made the transition to the mining industry. And so that is actually really helpful. And I think companies with our labor shortage are starting to realize there's not enough people in mining. You can't just keep poaching people from other companies. You have to actually try and go outside of it and bring people in, which is a harder task to do. Your return on investment is not going to be as high, but that's how you bring in more people. So I'm really optimistic actually, because I've started to see that a little bit more of people trying to reach out to other industries and bringing people in.
Okay, great. And there's been a few messages here, a few questions from people with different like chemical engineering backgrounds, different types of engineering backgrounds who hadn't necessarily thought about mining and are just wondering if you have any tips or resources that they can go to better understand the industry who for somebody who has an engineering background but maybe not in the mining.
Yes. First thing I would say is try to find your local networking events and talking to people there because the people who are there will have those varieties of backgrounds or they will know somebody from a similar background as you that they can probably connect you with. So if you're from like a chemical engineering background and you're really not sure how to get going or to learn more what you can do as a chemical engineer, if you go to any of those, like we all know the chemical engineers working in the process plant, so we can probably connect you with somebody there that you can talk to about different career paths. So that would be probably number one. If you want to do some research on your own, I mean, MIHR has great resources when it comes to the labor force in the mining industry so that you can learn more, learn about the different types of careers or the different types of jobs within the industry and the backgrounds that are required for that. And you can also reach out to other organizations like the CIM, WIM, YMP, things like that, also to find opportunities there to learn more about the industry. PDAC is another good one as well. There's also the provincial or regional mining associations that also have a lot of information about the different types of careers in the industry in their specific region as well, if you're looking to get more local information. But unfortunately, I know I sound a little bit like a broken record. It's always about talking to people, about going to network. That's how the mining industry is right now. It's very dependent on networking. Everybody kind of knows each other. It's a small industry, and unfortunately, like the majority of the industry functions on like word of mouth and recommendations from people that they know. So if you want to get involved in the industry, if you want to learn more about the industry, the best way to do that is by making one-on-one connections. And the best way to do that is to go to your local networking events where that's specifically what people are there for. And they're usually more open to actually talking to you.
Well, speaking of networking, do you see a space really where specific mentorship plays a crucial role, specifically in opening doors on boards, becoming a board director? You know, I have a question here about, are there structured opportunities specifically designed to support women in attaining these roles on boards? And even, you know, how have you seen, you know, inclusive and welcoming are the boardroom environments for women?
I can't really speak to like corporate boards because I've never been on one. That's something I'm aiming towards one day, but not yet. For not-for-profit boards, becoming more and more popular. I think people have clued in to the fact that they can be really helpful to then get your corporate board position. There is a lot of board training certifications available, and a lot of organizations will also like offer scholarships for that. For example, WIM Canada is over the next year or so developing scholarships to help women get that kind of certification to then be able to showcase it to be able to get on a board. But I would say like your best bet if you're looking to get on a corporate board is start by going not for profit. It's not paid, but it'll give you more experience on the governance side that you usually can't get really anywhere else that will then be transferable to a corporate board. Now, the not-for-profit boards are becoming more and more competitive because people have clued into the fact that they are really helpful to get onto a corporate board. So the best way to do that is to get involved with that organization that you want to get on their board first, have them get to know you, and then hopefully you'll be able to get onto the board. But they'll also be able to give you much more specific advice on that particular board, what they're looking for or what they need for the future. Yeah, I can't really talk about getting on a corporate board. Fingers crossed in the next 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're pretty much running out of time here, but I guess as a last question, we'll ask what one piece of advice you would give to a young woman who's not sure about where she's going to go in her career and may or may not have considered mining as a career, but what's that one piece of advice you'd give to somebody who's looking to get into a career?
I would say give it a shot. Like, try it out. You don't have to stay if you don't like it. That's okay. Like, you never have to stay anywhere that you're not happy in, but give it a try and see, because you're probably going to be surprised about what the mining industry can offer. And also, it's okay if you like the industry, but not your job. You can always change your job. Same thing, if you're not happy at that company, every company has a different culture. You have to find the one that fits for you. And it's okay not to stay if you're not happy there. Go find the right fit for you. It's okay. It goes both ways, right? A company is trying to find the right fit and you're trying to find the right fit. They usually understand when it's not quite working out. But yeah, if you're not sure about a career in the mining industry, give it a chance. Everything you're going to learn here is going to be transferable to another industry. A mine site is basically just a giant construction site. So if you're not happy there, you can easily go into construction afterwards, or pulp and paper if you're on the processing side, or a ton of other industries. So a lot of the things you're going to be learning is very, very transferable to other industries. So give it a try. You might like it.
Well, Melanie, I think you set the bar for the series of webinars here for career ambassadors. I think this is a fabulous presentation, an excellent Q&A session. And like I said to everybody on the call, there's going to be an email sent out, a follow-up. We're hoping that everybody can follow Mir and Mining Needs You on social media. You can go to mihr.ca, miningneedsyou.ca for more information. And Melanie, thank you again for participating. This has been fantastic. And thanks to the audience for joining us. We hope to see you in a couple months for our next Mining Needs You Career Ambassador webinar. So with that, I wish everybody a great rest of day. And thanks again, Melanie.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
Bye-bye.